Welcome, everyone, to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I'm your host today. I want to welcome everyone and thank our sponsor, the Weavers Guild of Greater Baltimore. Thank you guys so much for jumping in there and being a support for Textiles and Tea. We appreciate it. Today, as always, your questions will be answered at the last 15 minutes. We'll get to as many as we can. I have a feeling we'll have a lot. Please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in the chat, but I can't always see them. So if you would, please put your questions in the Q&A. Today, I am honored. We have Tom Knisely. Tom has had his career from his interest and love of textiles from around the world. Tom has been studying, collecting, and teaching others about weaving and spinning for more than 4 decades. In addition to teaching, Tom weaves professionally and is a frequent contributor to Handwoven magazine. Voted Handwoven's Teacher of the Year, Tom is renowned for among his students for his kindness, good humor, and seemingly infinite knowledge on the subject of weaving. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how's everybody today?
Merry Christmas. I like that tree.
Well, thank you very much. We are all set up for the holidays. And
yes.
Would you believe we just got back from a wonderful trip to South Africa, where I was able by this wonderful technology to see Madeline's interview last week.
Oh, good.
And, it was fantastic. We came home, put up the tree, and we're settling in for the holidays.
That's great. That's great. Technology can be pretty darn good.
It's amazing. I need a lot of help with it, though. I'm still back in the dark ages, but I am trainable. So
hey, you turned your camera off and on. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, let's start with a simple question. What is your favorite tea?
Well, I am having a cup of PG Tips. And PG Tips is a British brand. My mother was from England, and so we just have always sort of stuck with that. So even today, I'm still drinking PG Tips. So it's a black tea.
Your mother's from England?
My mother was from England. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. Yeah, I did. I did that research. I knew that.
Yeah. My dad was a good old Pennsylvania German guy, but she immigrated after the war, and they met. And so here I am.
There you are.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get started in fiber?
You know what? It's a really sort of interesting story. And I know probably some of you have already heard this before, but my parents met really late in life. And so they're just very knowledgeable about life. You know, I think it comes with maturity as you get older, and they had an interest in history. And so from a little kid, I was drugged to antique shows and antique shops, and sort of what I feel like the ultimate antique would be a spinning wheel. So when I was very young, I bought an antique spinning wheel, and I was curious on how it worked. And the shop owner that I bought the antique spinning wheel from said, there is a place about 30 miles from here in East Berlin, Pennsylvania, called the Manning's Hand Weaving School. And if you go down there, I bet they can help you out getting started. Well, I was too young to even drive at that point, but my dad took me down there, and let me tell you, it was life-changing. I just walked in there, and here were all these looms and spinning wheels, and you know, I bought some wool and some carders and Elsie Davenport's book on how to spin, and went home, and sure enough, it all came together, and I knew right then and there, this is what I wanted to do with my life.
Well, people talk about life-changing moments. That really was. I mean,
Really
you and the Mannings became, such an item,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it all work, but it did. And so I am very, very grateful for all of that.
And we are too. We are too. We have all benefited from that wonderful combination there. So we're going to show some rugs. Then these are examples of your beautiful color use. And I'm always so curious how they work with color. Like some people are I go by the rules, and I always have my secondary colors next to each other and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Some people just have this intuitive. And then there's some people like me that try it and go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And then we get rid of it. And then we try another one. Oh, that worked. How do you think how you approach color? What gives you that wonderful color sense?
Well, even like looking at the piece on the left-hand side of your screen, I was really inspired many years ago by Kente cloth out of West Africa.
Oh,
And so
okay.
that was the inspiration from this. But as many of you know, they probably weave that cloth only, 3-4 inches wide. And I thought, well, if I piece those together, I could have a good looking wider table runner or something like that. But I'll just do it as a rep weave. But really, I'm just looking at color all the time. And even getting back from Africa, when you're out there and you see that savannah and the colors that are in that, or you're in the Caribbean and you're looking at the colors of the water, my mind immediately goes to UK cotton, thinking, I know that safari color is going to work out perfectly for this. And then the trees, and then of course the animals. And I'm looking at the spots on the giraffe last week and thinking, I could do this in some kind of weave structure. So I'm always looking around, even like the tree right behind me, that dark green next to those bright colors. It's striking, and that's why we love it.
So do you find that you gather things as you travel?
Oh, you bet I do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, either in photographs or it could be a pebble off of a beach, a seashell, and I'll use that. And then I just go down to the shop and start looking around and finding colors that sort of mimic that and figure out a weave structure that's going to work for that. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be something very familiar to me, like overshot, or it might be something very new and different, like a weave structure I may never have tried before. And I'll see if I can't make those colors work into that.
Well, speaking of overshot,
Uh-huh.
which do you think is more important to you? Is it color or structure?
You know what? That's a good question. And our friend Madeline told me a long time ago. Um, there's like two people. There is the structure people that could weave happily with black and white, and just try all the permutations that you could possibly do with that. And then there's the color texture people who we could possibly be happy weaving plain weave or a simple twill for the rest of their life. And I have to tell you, I think it's a crossover for me.
Is it
I like putting them all together and see, and sometimes they work and sometimes they really do look like a dog's dinner. And I go, well, I learned from that. It's not very good, but we'll try something else a little bit different.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I love these images because um the one on the left I chose because it is kind of complicated looking, and
Yeah.
everything. But yet the one on the right is basically a plain weave, but it's still so complicated.
Well, the one on the right hand side is a rep weave.
Uh-huh.
And so and I love weaving rugs. So I just looked at those block designs and put them together. And I like the color combinations. And that might have been inspired by something that I saw, and I like the colors. And
Mhm.
I am so grateful for yarn companies that really put themselves out there to make sure that we have a generous palette to choose from. Sometimes you find a thread and you love it. And being in this business, I sort of know it's very expensive. And dye houses want you to dye 1,000 pounds of a color at a time. So they might only have a limited range of, 12 colors. But when you can just go in there and it's like a Crayola box, oh my gosh, you start putting things together. I love that. So thank you to any yarn manufacturers out there who are watching. I really appreciate all that you go into doing this.
Well, let me ask you this. If I walked into your studio, would there be all kinds of yarn? Or are you one of these people that you use the yarn up and then you get more?
Oh no, I it's a stash. It's a stash. And I love a sale, and we laugh about the dead weaver sale. So when you have the opportunity to pick up a couple cones of linen at a rock bottom price, I do. And I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it later.
I love that. I
Yeah.
went to a studio one time with a weaver and he said, where do you keep all your yarn? She was like, I weave it. It's like, oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, if you walked into the studio right now and you opened up the cupboards, you would just see yarn after yarn after yarn. And
I
I
love
sort of
that.
think, yarn, sometimes I collect it just because it's cool. I'll never forget seeing some hand spun fiddlehead fern fronds from Japan. And what they did is they mixed it in with some cotton and some hemp and they spun it up. And it was absolutely beautiful. I have no intentions of ever using that. It's just, I had to have it because it was just so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Well, you have stated one of the things that you like about weaving is that, and spinning, is at the end of the day you have something to show for what you do. And when I read that statement, I thought about you as a teacher, because wouldn't you say that your teaching is also, you have something to show, maybe not at the end of the day, but you've impacted so many people and sent them out into the world. So it's kind of a parallel, don't you think?
Oh, it is a parallel. Absolutely. There is nothing more sweet to my heart than to have somebody send me a photograph of something that they've just finished off. And I'll say, gosh, I remember when they didn't know one end of the loom from the other. And now they're doing this really amazing work and it makes them happy. That's what makes me happy. And yeah, I love that part of it. I think making students is just as important as, actually creating something.
Well, you've been an artist for a while and you've seen so many changes over the years. Everything from, what's available yarn wise to where you're working, that you're writing and everything. What do you see as the future of weaving and spinning? Where do you see it's going?
That's a good question. There is so much wonderful information out there
Mhm.
that wasn't there when I started weaving. When I think about the possibilities of just plugging into, conversations like this every week. I mean, thank you so much for doing this because it allows people to connect with HGA, Pinterest. I mean, the interest that people can see by just going in and looking at that. And Facebook. Oh my gosh. What would we do without Facebook and the 4-shaft and the 8-shaft and the complex weavers or just rug weavers in general? I mean, you get a lot of inspiration for that. And yeah, I think we're going to see more of that type of thing, but also interesting yarns that are out there. I'm a very traditionalist, when it comes to my yarns, but every once in a while you see something really interesting that has lots of texture and spirals. And I'll go into knitting shops too and look for yarns there that I'm not going to find in a weaving shop. So I think that's where it's going.
That's encouraging. I like that too.
Mhm.
Well, one thing that's very interesting from your point of view is that you are a male in a predominantly female activity, craft, whatever you want to call it. So what's been your experience as the guy in the room?
Oh, it's really interesting. Yeah, I love sort of just being quiet and listen to the conversations. What I find is that women will sort of open up and talk about things that men will never talk about. And I find it fascinating just to listen to conversations, their creativity. Especially like, oh, I'm really inspired by this, or I like this. I think men don't do so much of that. And, when I look at my classes over all the years, I would say it's less than 10% is male oriented. But I think a lot of men who would love to do this will come to the classes because I am a man and they will
Oh,
not feel uncomfortable. And I would like to see more people. I'd like to see people of other ethnicities coming into the classes as well. I find it when I think about this history, because everybody knows I like history, but when you think this was a male-dominated industry years ago, and then all of a sudden around 1890, 1900, everything cuts off, and it's sort of stagnant for a while, and then we've got people like Mary Outwater coming in, and the Depression hit, So you could buy a rug loom and you could have it and you could make rag rugs and you could sell it, but it became more of a pastime, sort of a leisure activity rather than something that you did for your livelihood. You know, when you could just go to the store and you could buy fabric inexpensively, what was the purpose of even weaving it? But you know, people like Mary Atwater, oh my gosh, I mean, she was doing research and she's writing and she's getting that word out there, and people are making things like placemats. You know, no longer did they have to weave a whole coverlet, but they could do an overshot placemat. You know, placemats are really a relatively new idea. You didn't decorate your table years ago with placemats. I mean, that's sort of, I would think probably from the 1930s, 1940s. Prior to that, you had a scrub top table or you had a tablecloth, but you didn't have placemats.
Was there
So,
ever a point that you felt like people didn't take you seriously because you were a guy?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, especially like going to family reunions and people go, are you still doing that? You know, like, when are you going to get a real job?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that hurts.
It hurts.
Oh,
Yeah. But you know what? At this stage of my life, I can turn around and go, huh, yeah, it was a really wonderful journey. This is really great. And I've met some of the most wonderful people in the entire world doing this.
and you've just impacted so many people. That's what just, I can't go anywhere and people don't know Tom. Everybody knows Tom. Yeah, that's
Well,
wonderful.
well, thank you. Yeah.
I
You
think,
just keep putting yourself out there. So,
right. But you do it well. I mean, anybody can put themselves out there, but you do it well. That's the difference. That's the
well, thank you for the
difference.
compliment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just a fact, not a compliment. What are fibers? Somebody's going to ask this. I know they are. So, what are your favorite fibers and why?
Hmm. Well, probably my favorite fibers are going to be natural fibers. So I work a lot with cottons and some linens, lots of wool, and I enjoy weaving a lot of rugs. That's for sure. But we have a lot of cotton around the house. My wife loves weaving dish towels, so we've got every color of 8-2 that's imaginable out there. So sometimes I'll cross it over. And of course, you know, I tried to find other uses for things like carpet warp. People go, oh, carpet warp. It's sort of like the ugly cousin, I think, for a lot of people. It's only used for, rag rugs. But I use it for baby blankets because it's got lots of colors. And after several washings, it is so soft and comfortable. It's wonderful. A new parent doesn't have to worry about, ruining that blanket. They can throw it in the washer and the dryer, and it just keeps coming out even better and better. But yeah, I tend not to work too much with synthetic fibers. I like the natural ones.
Do you think, because I've heard people who've been weaving for a while talk about how you had this limited source and variety of yarns, and then now there's everything, like you said, fawn and flora, it's now yarn. Do you
Yeah,
find that you've changed some, or are you pretty steady in what you've used?
I would say I'm pretty steady in what I use. But for instance, the rug that's being shown on the screen right now,
Mm-hmm.
that is all cotton flannel fabric. Now, I have
Really?
woven many, many, many rag rugs, but I never really paid too much attention to cotton flannel. And oh my gosh, I would say within the last 3 to 5 years, I found that old cotton sheets, flannel sheets, or even some of the big fabric stores, when they put that on sale, I bring it home, I wash it, and I like tearing those rags, and they tear easily and on the grain, and they squash down. And when you feel that rug, you know that you've got something substantial that's going to last for years and years and years. So yeah, this was all just sort of cotton flannel sheets off the bed that I just tore and put into that. And that strong contrast between the lights and the darks, I think, are really attractive. But oh my gosh, if you go to a well-known fabric store, you're going to see that cotton flannels are available in 20 colors, and you can have a ball just standing there just trying to choose 3 colors to use. Yeah.
So it's pretty durable, huh?
It's really durable.
Really? I always thought it wouldn't be durable.
Yeah.
Now I got to do it. That's on my list now.
Yeah. And
It's
you
all
know,
your
one of the things I think everybody has to be is a little, self-conscious about how much you're spending if you're buying new fabric. I don't like sewing strips together. I like long strips. So if I can go to a fabric store and buy an entire bolt, I now have a 10-yard or an 8-yard strip of fabric. I love that. But if you're using something like a batik fabric, oh my gosh, it can be $12, $15 a yard. Where if you're using things like a cotton flannel, you might spend $3 or $4 a yard. And if you've got your 40% off coupon, bingo, I'm in there.
I want to go shopping with you, Tom.
Oh, you come
I
right
think
along.
it would be an experience.
We're going to have fun.
Road trip.
Road
All
trip.
right. Okay, you started your career. Speaking of the Mannings, I want you to talk some about that because you started a part of your career. I don't want to say your career. You've done so many wonderful things, but you started part of your career at the Mannings. And now that they've closed, you have the Redstone Glen.
Correct.
And I have to say, I admire your bravery because that's a big leap. That's a big responsibility.
It's a big leap. And let me tell you, I give all the credit to my daughter, Sarah.
Aww.
She and her husband are the owners of Redstone Glen. I am happy to sit back and be their employee. And when you look at that property, the funny thing about it is we've knew about this property for years and years and years. And I believe that in your life, there are times when things just like a book open up and it is supposed to happen. This beautiful property was owned by actually a high school friend of mine. She and her husband put this addition onto this really lovely old house that was her family home. And they put like 4,000 square feet, a house there. So it's a very big house. Well, unfortunately, their marriage fell apart and she was living in this big house. She was ready to sell it and Manning's was closing. And Sarah and I just looked at it and said, you know, there's a possibility here. I think this would work. So pretty much of the upper floor of the house is Sarah and Dustin's private quarters. And then we use the rest of the house, including the kitchen area for the students to use. But we fill it full of looms and lots of books and lots of threads. And we have a really good time there.
Well, tell us, kind of go back and tell us about your journey with the Mannings. How did all of that start? I know you went there to learn, but how did that relationship develop?
Well, you know, it was interesting. I was just this young guy, and I think everybody's glad when a young person comes along, because I know that everybody who's watching here today is democratically of a certain age. And we're saying, okay, we got to get more young people in here. Well, here was this young guy who was interested in spinning and weaving and coming in, and Mr. and Mrs. Manning at that time were in their 70s. And my father offered me an opportunity to work as a butcher with him. And, you know, I am so glad that he turned around and he said, you know, you got to follow your own heart. You need to know what and do what you want to do. And when Harry Manning came to me and said, would you be interested in actually coming to work for me? I jumped at the opportunity, and my dad says, you go for it. This is exactly where your life needs to lead. So, you know, thank you, Dad, for that. So I started working there as you know, in my late teens. And
were you teaching? Was that your job, teaching?
No, not at that time. Oh my gosh, I was doing everything and anything at that point, you know, but I was learning. So it could have been anything from like packing orders to waiting on customers. And then, we're preparing looms for the next class. So I'm learning how to read a draft and how to thread that loom correctly, because it's got to be right when the students come in. So doing all those sort of things. And then it wasn't very long after that, I found that I really loved being an instructor, and they gave me the opportunity to start teaching at that point. First spinning, and then doing some of the weaving. And and so Mr. and Mrs. Manning sold the business to Carol and Ron Woolcock in 1985. And when Carol and Ron came in, well, it's like things change. New broom sweeps clean in that place. So we got rid of a lot of things and started introducing more classes, other looms, other spinning wheels, and just making that business grow and grow and grow. And then they decided about 8 years ago that they wanted to retire. And so when those doors closed, Redstone Glen became the next avenue to go by. So that's how it all really sort of went and came together. Yeah, I
Did
never.
Did you take classes from other people? Did you take workshops?
You know what? I had an opportunity because of working at the Mannings. We would bring in a lot of instructors.
Oh, of course.
Over the years. So I had opportunity to sit in or actually take the workshops with them. And I mean, there's nothing like having to set up the looms for the instructor to come in. So I was really well acquainted with how those threadings went and beaming that on, and any sort of like little idiosyncrasies that, like a supplementary warp, how do you go about doing that and having it ready to go? So I learned a lot from doing hands-on, day in and day out, yeah, all year round. I
Well,
am forever grateful for that.
I'm a big proponent of, as much exposure to a variety of teachers as possible. What a treasure that must have been for you to.
Oh my gosh. And
because there's no one way to do anything, right? And there's definitely not one way to weave or teach or anything. Yeah.
No, and I learned a lot about teaching skills because I'm not a trained instructor, coming from a college where my children all are, and they've had that opportunity. But I'm a good listener and watching and seeing how people absorb information, and just knowing that sometimes you might have to say something many times until it finally clicks. So anytime I can have like physical samples for people to see or illustrate it in some other way, I think that's just really, really important. And like you said, there's no set rule to really anything. I mean, there's got to be 100 ways to make macaroni and cheese, and daggone it, they're all good.
That's right. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as bad macaroni and cheese.
No.
Oh, I love that. You have written several books. This is one of them. This is your new one, right? This one
Yes, it is.
It's out now, right?
It is out now.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. So I have several questions about this. So let's
Okay.
start with, why a book? I always ask people, it's a lot of work.
Oh, it's a lot of work. Yeah. But it's fun. And this particular book came about because I had written another rag rug book prior to that. So explaining about materials, what to use, what, how much you're going to do, how much you're going to need to make a rug, because prior to that, a lot of them were sort of based on recycling old pieces of clothing and sewing strips together. And, to make a rug that's 30 by 40 inches, you're going to need 5 pounds of rags. Well, it occurred to me, if I went into Joann Fabrics and asked the clerk for 5 pounds of cotton flannel fabric, they're going to look and say, well, I don't know what that looks like. So I did a lot of research for that book on like how to buy fabric if you're going to do that. But it had always been in the back of my mind about recycling. And that's what this book is basically based on, is recycling fabric. So I used everything from old army blankets that had a moth hole in them that weren't good for anything any longer, including things like my painter's tarp that was on the floor. I begged him for it and cut that up. Oh my God, it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. And when you cut that into strips and start weaving it into a rug, it was awesome. So there's a lot of recycling fabrics in this particular book. And I think it's just important to do things like that, even if it's just getting old sweaters from your friends and cutting those up and weaving them into rugs.
And people are so excited now about recycling and
Mhm.
upcycling.
Upcycling.
Yeah, and that's wonderful that people are really they're into that and they're passionate about it. That's wonderful.
Well, it does make you feel a little bit better, you know.
Why rugs? I love making rugs, so I'm curious where you come from on that. Why rugs?
You know, I think it might have been because my first loom was an old barn frame loom, and
Oh,
it had two harnesses. And I would go to guild meetings and hear people that had a 16 shaft Maycumber loom. And I thought, that's what I want to aspire to. But I only have two harnesses. So what can I do? And it's this big, massive, uh, loom. But I love the idea of just doing something that is sort of heavy. I loved the rugs of the Southwest. And I thought, oh, okay, well, those are normally done on a vertical loom, but I've got this loom. I could do that sort of design. The difference would be that I'm going to have fringe on it. And those Southwest Navajo style rugs do not. It's a very different way of, weaving. But I was limited to that. And I have to say that really has played a lot in how I design things, because I have a 16 shaft countermarch loom that I rarely go more than 8 on it. I am more interested in what I can do creatively with fewer complexities. So if I can only have 2 shafts, I have to use color, I have to use texture, I have to use other things to make beautiful things. And rugs just sort of fall into that. I could do weft-faced rugs, I could do warp-faced rugs, I could do things that are sort of a balance, which most people sort of think of when you have carpet warp at 12 ends to the inch and you're introducing rags into that. And you go, wow, I never would have thought that purple rag in this warp would look so good, but look how awesome it is. And I can also weave the orange into it as well. So I don't know, I've just always been sort of passionate about weaving rugs.
I have two. And I always wonder what it is. It's 1,001 things, or it's nothing. I don't know.
You know what?
Well,
Some people are going to relate to this. I recently had to go for my Welcome to Medicare exam. And here's this young guy. My wife and I sort of behind his back call him Scooter because, I think he's 12 years old. And he's going, well, here's the dial on the clock. Can you tell me what those numbers are? And then they go, do you have any scatter rugs around the house? Well, of course I lied. No, I don't have any scatter rugs around. I have hundreds of scatter rugs around the house if I wanted to, but I'm not going to tell Scooter that I've got scatter rugs around the house. He doesn't understand what I do anyway, but I guess they're looking out for my well-being.
you'll get another one of those. Are you still doing that weaving thing?
Yes.
Scooter. I like that. Scooter. Other
Scooter.
people like Scooter too. I'm looking at the comments. That's great.
Oh my gosh, everybody started all of a sudden is younger than you are. So,
Yeah, Scooter. I have to remember that. Well, I want to go back to books because I'm still curious about that. You've chosen different topics. How did you come about doing that? I mean, did the publisher say, hey, you really should do this? Through your classes, you said, oh, this is what people are interested in?
Well, after I did the first rag rug book, the publisher said, okay, well, what's next? And so I thought, oh my gosh, everybody I talked to in classes and things, again, they want to do baby blankets. They're having their first grandchild, but there's really not a whole lot of good information out there on how to weave a baby blanket. And what materials do I use? Should I go with something that's a synthetic, that's easy wash, or, well, cotton's an easy wash, but which ones do I do? And so I thought, that's a really good thing to think about. So I I approached them again and said, yeah, you know what? I think we ought to do a book on baby blankets. And I'll come up with like 30 different designs using different materials. Keep some of them very, very simple for the beginning weaver. And then when you've got somebody who's been weaving for a number of years and they've got more complex looms, let's give them an 8-shaft designs and go with that. So it was that. And then we did one on table linens. And then I'll never forget Madeline talking about Huck. Now, do you remember she's the queen of Huck, but I'm a rug weaver. I don't want anything to do with Huck. And oh my God, she said lace. Why would I want to weave lace? Well, I have to agree with her. It is an absolutely fascinating structure, but I never sort of thought about the structure itself. And when you look at a lace unit for Huck, it's always an odd number. And I had seen this really fantastic piece of fabric, came out of Japan, and it was log cabin. And it was a 5-thread repeat. Dark, light, dark, light, dark. Dark, light, dark, light, dark. So whenever those blocks came together, there were 2 dark threads that created this really wonderful vertical line in it. And then they also, as you treadle it, trompe as writ, you get it horizontally as well. But it was just this 5-thread unit. So I'm thinking about how I'm going to thread that. It gets complicated and go, oh my God, Huck is a 5-thread unit. What if I use something like log cabin with this color and weave effect and introduce it into Huck lace? What would happen? Immediately warped up a loom and it's like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. Now I wonder if I change it this way, and I change it this way, and I change it this way, and sample after sample after sample kept building. And I have to be honest with you, some of them are just butt ugly, but some of them are just fabulous. And so I thought this could possibly be another book. And so using with just naturals and then seeing what would happen if I put complementary colors together. Would it be successful? Then what about tertiary colors? Could I introduce that in there and using a dark, medium, light combinations in there? And so it just kept building and building and building. And oh my gosh, I had a book. So Huck with color and weave effects was the next one in line.
How many do you have now?
I think this is number 8, but in part of that, I've written 2 children's books.
They are wonderful. People are commenting on your children's books. They are wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
They are so wonderful. Those are great.
Yeah.
Well,
can I talk about one real quick? Do we have time?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I had done an article on rep weave for handwoven, and it had been a number of years ago. But somebody came to the studio one day and they said, Tom, you had done this rug for this issue. You don't happen to have it, do you? I'd really like to see what it looks like and how hefty it is. I go, oh yeah, I think I have it upstairs. So I ran upstairs, looked in the archives, found it, pulled it out, and it was all rolled up. And I shook it out. And oh my gosh, you would never believe. I was so embarrassed. There were peanut shells and there were sunflower seeds came flying out of it. And there was a hole about that big in the middle of the rug. Some mouse made its nest in there, smelt like mouse urine. And here I am showing this rug in front of a customer thinking, oh my gosh, how could you embarrass yourself any more than this? And so when I finally sort of calmed down and apologized for how bad it was, I just thought, that would make a great kid's book. And I'll just have the mice be a rug weaver's helper in this. And so one evening, and I feel really sort of guilty about this, I spent one evening writing the text for the book, and it took my illustrator a whole year to do it. And she did a fantastic job, who's also a weaver.
Oh, really?
What's the chances of that? Having your illustrator also understand the working mechanism of the loom. I mean, that was supposed to happen. So that's how that all happened. So
what a great story. Yeah. That's perfect.
So talk about making lemonade out of lemons. It was perfect.
I love that. Well, you've talked about, collecting this and collecting that. I didn't realize you are a collector.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we've got some images here of some of the things that you collect. So this we have is a show towel, which I have to admit, until I talked to you, I did not know what that was. So if you would talk some about the show towel, and then why is that a passion for you? Why is collecting these fabrics?
It's something that is found right here in sort of the South Central Pennsylvania area. It has a great influence by the Pennsylvania Germans. So during the late 18th, early 19th century, it was not unusual for young girls to do a sampler showing their needlework skills, but also to do this show towel. So when you look at this, it's showing their needlework skills like you would see in a sampler, but it was to be decorative, or sometimes they're just known as a door towel, but it was never in your kitchen. It was intended to be on the parlor side of the door, not in the kitchen side. So you never use it for wiping your hands. It was to show off. And in these sort of religious sects, the people come to the house. So, you're 12, 13 years old, and there's a young guy coming from down the road to come to church on Sunday, and he's seeing what a good catch you might be from doing all this fancy needlework skill as a way sort of to show off how you would make a good wife. But they're very decorative. What I love about this particular towel is it's narrow. And of course, I like old barn frame looms as well. And people go, well, probably 3-4 times a year, somebody will call me and say, I have this barn frame loom and I'm having trouble balancing it. What they don't realize is that you never wove something that wide on that loom. It was intended to weave wide fabric. So out of hundreds of these towels that I've seen, they all have a selvage on one side and they have a rolled hem on the other. So they took a wide piece of fabric, cut it in half vertically, and then hemmed that up, and then went in and started stitching that. So you can see from that photograph that there's a lot of detail work in there, but then there's also a little saying in here. And I don't know if you have another photograph of the saying itself, but I can repeat it to you. It's Suzanne Byler is my name. And I think this was done like in 1823. So first of all, this is 2023. That towel is 200 years old. But she's 12 years old. And she's saying, Susan Byler is my name and heaven is my final reach. But when I am dead and in my grave and all my bones are rotten, when this you see, remember me, lest I be forgotten. Now you think about this.
That's on the towel?
That's all that inscription, all hand done.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
And when I think about that, my gosh, this girl is 12 years old and she realizes that, I don't know how much longer I have, but when this you see, remember me, lest I be forgotten. It's verifying and giving documentation that she lived. And so when I see that Susan Byler, I might be able to actually go to like in Lancaster County and look her up in Mennonite records and actually find out who was she, who did she marry, are there descendants from that? There's a lot of really important information that leads me down a pathway that might be a really sort of fun adventure to go to. And so that's why I love these so much. And when I think about the work that goes into this by such young hands, it blows me away, especially when I think about our young people today with their tablets and their cell phones and everything like that. This is what you did at night by the fire.
So what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, I'm thinking about slowing down a little bit as far as teaching goes. I am going to go down to Florida Tropical Weavers this year and teach a class for them in March. And I'm looking forward to Michigan as well. I'd like to go out to Michigan Fiber Fest, but I'm going to slow down a little bit and do a lot more traveling with my wife and collect more textiles and write about them. And when I find something really great, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Is there another book in your future?
Oh, you know what? I always got things thinking about what I want to do in there.
Well, Tom, dear, we have more questions than I think we've ever had in Textiles and Tea. You've hit a record. So let me tell you, folks, we're not going to get to all these questions, and I'm sorry. A lot of these questions, buy the book. But one of the questions is about the book, and this is from kind of a continuation. You said the book is out, so can we buy it at Redstone Glen?
Absolutely. And if you would like to call Annie at Redstone Glen, and I will personalize it to you.
Oh, there you
and
go.
If you want to do something very cool,
Ruth, you want that book? Ruth Howe, get him to sign it.
Absolutely, I'll sign it for you. Or it makes a great gift for another weaving friend during the holidays. I'll sign it to them and personalize.
You're a good promoter. Way to go, Tom. Now, a lot of these questions are not questions, they're your fans. Susan Simpson says, hi, Tom, good to see you. And then later on, she talked about what a huge impact you had on her weaving career. So
you know what?
Thank you.
Like we spoke about earlier, it makes my heart so happy. Susan Simpson has written a number of books using the same publisher I do, and I have encouraged her to do that. Susan, cheers to you. You have done a great job with that, and it makes my heart happy.
Oh, good.
So keep it going.
All right. This is a good question. This is from Catherine Bone. She wants to know, what is your favorite number of shafts to weave on?
I would say I'd be disappointed if I had not an 8 shaft loop, because there are some things, but I'm a rug weaver, so I'm happy with 4. Yeah. I would say probably 70% of my work is just done on 4 shafts.
Catherine Doofendak wants to know, if you used yarn meant for knitting, how do you handle it differently than for weaving?
That is a great question, because knitting yarns, and you know, a lot of us sit on a lot of knitting yarns, but they are spun specifically to have a lot of stretch to them. Mm-hmm. You know, if you think about the architecture of knitting versus weaving, with knitting, it has to be flexible so you can make that loop on side of a needle. But there are times, and of course, we know that you could use it for the weft, but there are times I want to use that in a warp way direction. So what I might do is strand that with either pearl cotton or maybe even tencel, and treat that knitting yarn as if it's a single strand, but with that reinforcement of that extra thread. The tencel or 10-2 pearl cotton, it will take the strength and help to reduce the elasticity that's in there.
You would take it through the heddle as one thread?
Yeah. Oh, so through every dent in the reed and every heddle eye, even on a rigid heddle, you could do this. You're just treating those 2 threads as one. And how I came about that, I went into a knitting shop one time and I was looking at a Barocco yarn where they had twisted this fine thread along with another yarn. And I thought, that's taking the brunt of everything. That little tiny core thread that's in there is giving the strength that you need. Otherwise, it would just drift apart. So if you do something even like Noro yarns or Lopi yarns that are specifically spun with a soft twist in it, add something else in there and treat it as those 2 threads as if they're one, and you won't have any trouble.
There you go, folks. A little mini workshop right here. Okay, I love this next question. This is from Julia Blake. What's it like being a weaver married to another weaver? Do you egg each other on? Do you weave with each other, or do you have separate spaces?
No, we have a lovely studio downstairs that we weave together. Cindy likes weaving uh Lots of dish towels. I'm sort of the rug weaver and experimenter, but yeah, we have 7 looms downstairs and we're always rotating around, weaving different things. So it's wonderful. At the end of the day, we can encourage each other and egg each other on, and yeah,
Play nice together. That's
we
good.
play nice together.
That's
You know
good.
what? We talk about the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were stranded, this is from Sandra. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only have one loom, which loom would you have?
Oh my. Oh, that's hard.
It's like, which kid is your favorite?
Yeah. I love Shack products. So I would have to say, I would want a Shack High Castle 8 shaft standard loom. But a lot of my rugs are done on a Swedish loom called an Oxabak, because it's sturdy. It is sturdy, sturdy, sturdy. But I do a lot of other things on a baby wolf. I love my baby wolf, but I never really promote that as a rug loom. So I gotta have it all. But yeah, I'll take a Shack standard on
Okay,
my desert island.
there you go. Lynn Brandt wants to know, how do you develop your designs? This is a good question. I always love to hear how people plan things out. Do you do graph paper, computer? Do you kind of wing it when you get on the loom?
Oh my gosh, if you really knew me, just setting up the Zoom tonight is a challenge for me. I am old school.
Oh,
I
okay.
will sit down with a piece of graph paper and a pen, and I will start getting ideas and putting them down. But I also like working through it, because I find that when I have to think about that thread and say, all right, these 2 threads are going up and these threads are going down, and that weft is interlacing this way. When I have to do it on graph paper, line by line by line, I really get it. Rather than working with a computer and relying on it by pushing a button to do that. So it's very helpful. But when we were on our trip, I'm looking at the carpeting in the hallway of the hotel, and I went back and I had my notebook and I started drawing it out, because it looks like clasped weft. And that's what the latest book I'm working on is all about, clasped weft.
You heard it here first, folks. Class
and,
12. I'm excited about that.
yeah, and how the colors all came together. So my mind is thinking and saying, but it's Tweety. How do I do that? Well, maybe by putting multiple strands together and clasping multiple strands. I mean, it just goes that way. And I've always got to have a piece of graph paper or a notebook around. Yeah, that's how I work.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Now, this is a good question. I think I know how you're going to answer it, but Kim says, do you have any recommendations about weaving rugs on a jack loom? I've heard that these looms aren't robust enough for this type of weaving, but it's the only floor loom I have.
Well, I probably have to say, what jack loom do you have?
Yeah.
Because some of them are pretty daggone sturdy.
Yeah, it's not about jack. It's about how much can you beat, right? Or how heavy can you beat?
Exactly. And I've recommended putting like a metal weight under the underside of the beater and adding maybe another 10, 15 pounds, maybe not 15, but at least another 10 pounds. And that really helps to pack that material in with that. Now, I love my countermarch loom because I get a shed that is enormous with that. But I get a shed wide enough on my jack looms that I can get a shuttle through without any problems with that. So I would say, not knowing what her jack loom is, the more portable it is, the least strength you have, because every joint that has movement to it, so you can fold it up and put it in the back of the car, you're compromising the strength of the loom. So tighten it up, really bolt that thing down the best you can. And yeah, but no, you can. I know people want to be able to weave a really sturdy rug on a rigid heddle. It's not going to happen. It just isn't.
Table runner, maybe, but
Yeah. Make some nice rag table mats. Yeah.
there you go. That's an excellent way, going back to the that's an excellent way of explaining it, that the number of moving joints and I'll have to keep that in mind. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Do you ever weave hemp? This is from Maxine Martel.
I haven't woven with a lot of hemp, but I have spun it, and I
Oh.
really enjoy spinning it. Although, you know, I've done a couple skeins, and then of course I go back to spinning cotton, or I go back to spinning wool and things. But I'd like to know more about hemp, because you know, there's a future there. It's an old timey fiber that got a bad rap. You know, with the whole that, but it's coming back. And
It
so
is.
I'm looking
It
forward
is.
to it.
I want to make some dish towels with those. I've heard that's the thing to do. We have a gajillion questions and I can't get to them all. A lot of people are asking if you're going to teach, but it sounds like you're going to cut back on teaching. Now, do you do online teaching? They want to know.
Not at all.
Not your
No,
thing.
it's not my thing. I
All
like
right.
the interaction with somebody. I like being over you, where I can look and see what you're doing, and, you know, having that personal interaction. That's just really important to me.
But you're going to keep teaching at Redstone Glen. For
Occasionally,
now.
for now, yeah, occasionally,
Okay.
yeah, I'll be doing that. And Sarah's a wonderful teacher. I know she's been listening to me interact
Learn
with
from the best.
students from the time she was a little tiny girl, and so I feel like I could pass the baton off to her. And, you know, I don't plan on checking out anytime soon, but things happen, you know, and we need to have more young people coming along here.
Yeah, people are already commenting. Sarah's a great teacher.
She is.
I would encourage you all, and I mean, I'm not promoting Tom's books because I don't get anything out of it, but a lot of your questions, check out his books. This man is a wealth of knowledge. So a lot of these questions that you had, especially about rag rug weaving, I don't have his new one, but I have the old one, and a lot of those questions will be answered in there. So, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all your questions today, but Tom, how much fun. And I feel bad we never even talked about spinning. You're a spinner, and we didn't even get to that.
Yeah.
So you'll just have to come back when another book comes out. Okay.
You know what? At another time. Love to come back.
All right. Thank you so much for being on here today. It has been too much fun. If you want to get a hold of Tom, you want to shoot him a question, check him out at redstoneglen.com. And you can see all about where he's teaching at Redstone and when, and maybe take a class with someone else that's going to be there.
And I wish you all happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too, Tom. I want to thank our sponsor. We are so excited that the Weavers Guild of Greater Baltimore has sponsored today. They are a wild guild. They do tons. Go check them out at their website, and it's wggb.org. And they're a very active guild. They get a lot of things done. So thank you, Baltimore. We really do appreciate you sponsoring this episode today. And if you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your guild or your business, go to our website at weavespindye.org and go to Textiles and Tea, and you can see how you too can sponsor an episode. We would love to have you. Guess what? Today is Giving Tuesday. And Giving Tuesday is a day dedicated to the celebration and encouragement of charitable giving and philanthropy. Now, it was started in 2012, and it's just become this huge global movement. And millions of people are coming together, and they're supporting and championing the causes they believe in. And they're doing it in their local communities. You know, it's not going off somewhere where you don't know where it goes to. If you believe in this community, if you believe in HGA and what we're doing, which is to educate, support, and inspire the fiber art community, come join us. Join our celebration. You know, they say follow your passion. If you want to follow your passion on Giving Tuesday, come join us and come celebrate with us. You can join either by going online at weavespindye.org. I believe the link is in chat, or you can call us at 678-730-0010. And we would appreciate your donations as a way to support the fiber community. If you've missed any episodes, you can watch those on Facebook, or you can watch them on YouTube. And I can't imagine anybody not wanting to watch this one again. Tom was such a delight. We've had some wonderful episodes lately. So if you want to watch them, tell a friend about them. You can watch them, like I said, either on the HGA Facebook page or YouTube. And I would encourage you to go in and subscribe to YouTube, because when you do, you'll get a notice when a new one's been uploaded. This will probably be up in a couple of weeks. Next week, we have Michaela McIntosh is going to be our guest. You may have seen Michaela on here. She's one of my great question askers. Good, Michaela. So we all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next week. Happy tea.